Hi, everyone, and welcome to My Own Lane. My guest today is Mya Constantino, and she is a podcast like host, right? A journalist and an aspiring storyteller. I thought it was really important to bring you on board today, Mya, just because you've done so much since the last time I saw you. We met EDC week back in 2018. I remember interviewing Say My Name. And then during that same week, obviously EDC week, I tagged along with you to interview dance music producer, Marcus Scholes. And when I saw you, I'm like, this girl is going places. You know, you were just so dedicated. Like, you really had great questions. I remember just enjoying your interview, and you were passionate. And I'm all like, this girl is going places for sure.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's been a fun ride, honestly.
You currently write for the Vegas Review Journal, Off the Strip. And then you just finished a short series called Envision. And we'll talk about all of that as we continue along. But I did want to touch a little bit on your blog, because I actually have to go back and revisit that as well.
Yeah.
And something that stood out to me, I mean, you had really great posts. Just like some of my previous guests, you've been open about your life online, and you've shared about, for example, healing, right? And which is, even before we started recording, I briefly touched on that's what I'm currently working on going through. And girl, I was reading your posts, and I'm like, damn, she's really a great writer. I genuinely enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoy reading your posts. And like I said, I sometimes, even before recording, I like reading articles just so I can get give myself ideas of how I can be even more creative, or just kind of possibly even recycle certain terms, certain phrases that I can bring on board for even my work. I was just enjoying your work. I really was.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's one thing to write, and then it's another thing to actually hear someone say that they've read through it and actually experienced it. So I do appreciate that a lot.
You know, and honestly, when I was reading your post, when you were talking about healing, you said something about you getting a Ziploc bag with putting your money in there, grabbing your luggage and putting your clothes there, and you just took off to Europe. Mm-hmm. And through this healing process myself, by the end of 2019, I was all like, I need to take off 2020. I want to travel. Right. Obviously, this whole pandemic happened, and I never got to travel. But when I was reading your post, I'm all like, this is a sign that I need it, that I definitely need to go travel, get away for at least a week, so I can possibly even help me even more with my healing process.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, honestly, go do it now, today, tomorrow, like this month, because if you say that you're in this healing process, wow, stepping out and kind of being away from everyone and everything is really going to just see yourself with more clear eyes, I think.
Like I mentioned, you're a writer, you're a journalist, you're a host, and you refer to yourself as an aspiring storyteller. Why was it important for you to share your story on Searching for Mya?
Yeah, so I started searching for Mya back in 2017. And I think at the time, you know, I had just got out of a really terrible breakup, right? And I was like effing lost, like didn't know who I was, just got caught up in this like mess of a relationship and just couldn't see things clearly, didn't see myself clearly. And I thought, well, I need to get these words, these emotions, these ideas onto paper or something. It needs to come out. And I remember after the breakup, I was meditating on a word, right? And that word was vulnerability. And I remember in 2017, that was like my word. I was like meditating on it. I was like, I got to make sure that I'm being vulnerable in every space in my life, with my family, my friends, with people online, because really that's really damn scary, right? To just allow yourself to be out in the open, to share pieces and parts of you that, you are afraid to reveal to people. Exactly. And I think I really needed to put my words out there and be extremely vulnerable with not only myself, but with others, to kind of showcase, like, it doesn't matter what people think. It also doesn't matter that I'm feeling any of these things, right? All of these emotions are okay. All of these ideas are okay. And at the end of the day, searching for Mya was really for me in a lot of ways. It helped me heal. It just so happened that a lot of people started reading and, reaching out and telling me that, hey, like, I kind of relate to what you're talking about here. And I relate to what you're writing here. And I think that that's also what inspired me to kind of keep going. Right. Because I mean, it's kind of a long-winded story, but in 2017, when I went out to Europe and I took like a solo trip out there, I was writing in my journal every single day. Right. And I was also traveling in a bus with 50 other people from like Australia and other parts of Europe. And I was just sitting in a bus with strangers, and I was heartbroken, and I was like effing lost. I was just like trying my best to like anchor myself. And what I found during that trip and within that year of vulnerability and searching for Mya was, I was able to heal through talking to people. I was able to heal through conversations with people on that bus. I remember I handed my journal to everyone on that bus, and I was like, write something in here so I can remember you, 5 years down the road. And everyone on that bus wrote something in that red journal. And I still have it. And, I look back on it sometimes and I just think like, wow, that was like a really beautiful and healing time for me.
Reminded me of like high school when you write your stuff, I'll miss you, keep in touch in the yearbook. Yes, but it's beautiful because you look back to it and it just kind of takes you back to, for example, with high school, even with your youth, right?
Right. And that's the thing. That's another thing too, like being on that bus, like traveling to different countries. So that trip was like a 3-week trip, and we were just all on this bus, like visiting all these different countries. I think we visited like 12 different countries, and it went by really fast. But through that journey, people would leave the bus and new people would come on the bus. And I realized that was a very important lesson for me to learn at that time, right? Because I was in this season of like, in my breakup, trying to let go of like the trauma and the memories and this person that was in my life. So I, took that as a lesson. You're going to be on this bus in life, and people are going to hop off, new people are going to come back in, but you're going to be on that bus, and you better fucking enjoy that journey and the scenery along the way.
That's a very good analogy. Like the way you put that, that's so beautiful. Yeah. No, and it is true. I mean, the bus ride is your life, and you're going to continue down that path until God knows when. And you're going to continue having people come in and out. And you just have to cherish the moments, I guess. Yeah. Take it for what it is, and then just continue to move on.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what it was, right? It's like every person that I interacted with on that bus, they had to hop off that bus eventually. So, and that saddened me because I was having some deep conversations and connections with these people, knowing that I probably was never going to see them again or really talk to them again. Right. So I think that was a pretty big lesson for me, to just kind of enjoy people as they are when they come into your life. Yeah. And also be okay with letting go of people and just letting go of things and like just appreciating like the impermanence of things in life and people and all that stuff. So
You have no idea how that actually hit my soul right now. Like you constantly hear it, and you know, for example, you might read posts on Instagram or other social media platforms relating to that, but actually hearing from another individual hits completely different.
yeah,
It's completely different.
absolutely.
So you're right. You right. And you've hosted Envision, where you helped promote local Black talent in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Why do you refer to yourself as an aspiring storyteller? And furthermore, what do you need to do to reach or even accomplish and finally meeting, I guess, that standard of being the storyteller?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a lot of things, right? Aspiring storyteller. I think I add that word in because I don't ever want to feel like I've already learned all that I could. Right. Like I'm a young woman, woman of color, who is intensely and fiercely dedicated to their craft. And I want to, never feel like I've already got it down. I've already learned all that I could. I'm sure I'll get to that point at some point in time. So there's that part of it. But then there's also part of me too, and maybe this is a human thing, maybe this is a person of color thing, but what is that syndrome that people have sometimes? It's kind of like when you're doing something and you feel like you're not quite there yet, or imposter syndrome.
I was thinking that one, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
I'm like, imposter syndrome? Yeah.
Yes. So it could be that too, there could be a part of me that's like, no, like you're not going to be a full storyteller until you get to this point, until you get a story out to the New York Times, or, you have your own travel series and you're a reporter reporting on things that matter to you. Right. I think as humans, we all have like these different markers.
To me.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's a pretty loaded answer. Honestly, it's pretty complicated, to be honest with you. But, as far as reaching my goals, I want to be able to create an independent show for myself, a travel independent show where I'm able to interview people from all over the world and tell their stories. That's what I'm aiming for.
And I can see that because obviously I follow you on IG and I've seen your posts, and even while doing my homework for the questions, I obviously revisited some of the posts and I saw you share pictures of you in other countries from like societies and where the places you were at. I think there was one specifically, you took a picture of a barbershop chair.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm all like, you're well on your way. You're well on your way. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You are definitely goals. I'll touch on that later, but will you be coming back soon to your blog?
I love that you asked that. That inspires me to get back on that blog, to be honest with you, because man, that blog's a little dusty. I need to clean up a little bit, rearrange some things, but I think searching for Mya will always be there. I think it'll follow me no matter what it is that I'm doing, but absolutely, I want to hop on that blog and start writing again and start sharing, more personal things in my life again, because a lot has changed since 2018, 2019, a lot.
We've all
gone through some major changes since then. And who I am now is completely different from who I was when I first started that blog. So things are probably going to be a little different. But absolutely, I definitely would like to hop on, but I think the name will still be the same, but it'll just be a different writer, I think.
More mature, grown.
Yeah.
I think we're always healing. I think that's something that's an ongoing process, similar to what you're saying. You'll with your career, you're always trying to be. You'll always kind of consider yourself an aspiring storyteller, and I think that kind of falls back, aligns with even healing. You'll be in a different place once you get back in there. Professionally, what followed after for you? And did your experience for that blog help out, contribute at all?
Well, so 2018, that's pretty much when I left that music blog, or when I stopped writing for them. After that, I just had this drive to start writing about things that mattered to me, right? So I really enjoy writing human stories. I really enjoy writing profiles. I really enjoy writing stories that help heal communities. So after that, professionally, I started picking up, different internships. I actually interned for this organization called Sister House Collective. Okay. And that was a kind of interesting opportunity because it wasn't what I was normally used to. I kind of went on as this community marketing, social media helper, right? But through that internship, I was able to connect with a bunch of creatives and artists in Las Vegas. So because of that opportunity, I was able to create more opportunities for myself, and I also learned just the power of relationships, the power of putting yourself out there and talking about what the hell you're working on and being proud of that. So that was great. And then after that, I started writing for different, I wrote for a travel publication. So I did some freelance there. So that was fun. I wrote for Desert Companion, which is, a magazine in Las Vegas, picked up some freelance work for Off the Strip. And then, also too, at the time I was in my undergrad. So I was working at the newspaper there and I was doing news articles and then here I am now, kind of picking up freelance work here and there, and I'm writing for the Review Journal. So a lot kind of came about from that opportunity at the music blog. I think at the time, I didn't think too much of that opportunity. All I know is that I just needed the experience. Right. I was open. I was hungry for knowledge. I was hungry for the exposure. And there was this one night at EDC when I was writing for that music blog. And I remember I was talking to the PR person for a music artist. I was supposed to interview him. Mm-hmm. And obviously at EDC, disconnection sucks. Signal sucks. Yes. So here I am. I'm supposed to have this interview with Borgor. Just remember the name, with Borgor. And I was running around trying to figure out where Borgor and his PR person was because I needed to do this interview. Right. But the signal sucked. So communication was off. And then I finally found them, but he had to go on stage, right? So the interview was only a couple of minutes. But what I learned from that experience is God damn, when I want and need something to happen, I will do whatever I can in my power to make it fucking happen. Mm-hmm, exactly. I was running around. I was who can I talk to? Where do I go? It needed to happen. I wasn't going to just let that go.
What was it? EDC Orlando in 2018. I scheduled I set something up to interview JCO and Jessica Aldifred. And then I was already having wristband issues because I was already working with production. And Insomniac is very particular about, I guess, wristbands. And I don't blame them. right? So it's either you have production or media credentials, whatever. But anyways, I had both. I had my media credentials. And so after I was done with my production work, I hopped on and did my media work. Right. But anyways, I was a little, because I've only interviewed artists outside of venues or events, not in actual events. So I was a little lost as to where these interviews were going to take place. And I ended up just having to meet JCO, and I had them come to me to the PR media tent.
Yeah.
And we made it happen. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where to go for the actual interviews. They're telling me I can't go to a specific place where apparently I should be able to interview you guys. So if you guys can come meet me here at the PR media tent, whatever. And I had to do what I had to do to get it done. Can you, tell us about the Envision series that you were a part of.
So essentially Envision was a 3-part episode miniseries, right? Focusing on Black artists in Las Vegas. And when I say artists, I mean the photographers that took those photos, the DJs that were playing during the episode, as well as the artists that I was interviewing. They're all representing the Black community. Right. So, just to give you a backstory, my great friend reached out and was like, hey, look at what's going on in the world, right? And him and I were just having a conversation about Black Lives Matter, the protests, how we felt about the situation. And
don't get me started, girl. Don't get me started.
I know. It's a lot. I basically expressed to him, like, look, there's I need to do something. I want to be a part of it. I want to contribute in some way. And he was like, well, I've got this loose idea. I need an interviewer. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll, provide my skill set. I'm totally on board. Let's do this. And we basically took about 3 months to finish the project. And what that looked like was, for each month, we kind of scheduled it out. So 1 month we brought in, it was at least 2 photographers, 1 DJ, and then 1 artist. Right. So everyone a part of that project was able to shine and showcase their art. That was the whole point, to just give a safe space for these Black artists to just shine, to tell their story. Right. And we all were just in the studio, kind of just hanging out and collaborating together. And it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to everyone involved, because, it was an awesome time. It was just an awesome time for everyone, I think. And that project will always be so special to me.
And it's beautiful, because I feel like as people of color, we need to continue kind of providing a safe space to kind of talk on many topics. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. I feel like, I come from a Mexican American background, and to a certain extent, my family still follows, for example, some traditional, I guess, way of living, roles. And then to a certain extent, even within our own community, some of our jobs, you as a journalist or even an entrepreneur, I feel like some of these roles, some of these creative areas are still kind of possibly even considered unattainable to reach. And so that's why I want to reach out to women our ages and even the youth to come on board. To tune in, to watch. Right. So they can see they can see themselves in a Mya, they can see themselves in, we know Lexi, who we used to work with at the music blog. Lexi, they can see themselves in a Lexi, they can see themselves in any of my other guests. Revisiting a lot of your posts, I came across a picture with you and Mayor of San Antonio, Julian Castro. Did you interview him? If so, how was that process? What was that connection like?
So it's funny. I was actually reporting for the school newspaper here at the University of Las Vegas a couple years ago. And essentially how that opportunity fell in my lap was none of the reporters wanted to interview him. I think what it was maybe they were a little too scared to or intimidated. You know, he was just kind of visiting to talk about homelessness, to kind of promote the youth to vote, right? Because he saw a lack of voting in, you know, our generation. So that's why he visited UNLV. And none of the student reporters wanted to interview him. And it's funny because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, right? I didn't know exactly who I was interviewing or who I was seeing until I got to, you know, the place that we were supposed to meet at. And, you know, he was with his, you know, everyone basically. He was surrounded by a bunch of people. And my friend, who is a photojournalist, was with me, and he was like, Mya, I'm surprised that you even said yes to this. Like you, this is
challenge yourself, girl. Challenge yourself.
Right. Yes. Right. And I was like, but it doesn't matter. He's just like, yes, he's doing things. He has responsibilities. He's high up in society, whatever people think. Right. Mm-hmm. But he's also another human.
Right.
And he's just as normal as anyone else. And so we met up. We sat for the interview. It was only, 5 minutes or so, but we ended up talking about what I had mentioned, homelessness, wanting to inspire the youth to vote and how he planned on doing that. And let me tell you, he was sick at the time.
Oh, wow.
He was sick on that day. He was so tired, girl.
Oh.
Like so stressed out, so tired.
And being on the road?
Oh my gosh. I felt so bad. I sat down with him. I was looking at him. He's such a sweet guy though. Very kind person. Mm-hmm. Sat in front of him. And I was like, how are you feeling? What's been going on? He's like, honestly, I'm kind of sick. I'm super tired. I've just been on the go for the last few days. And I was just like, well, thanks so much for doing this interview and for, just kind of giving me the time to ask you questions. So that's kind of how that connection came about. I think what's funny though about that experience is that no one wanted to interview him. And I was like, let's just do it. Let's just go. Who cares?
Right.
He's just like any other human,
You challenged yourself. Yeah. You met a politician. You write that in I'm sure you write that in your resume. An experience of a lifetime in its own, Yeah. So good for you. Good for you, girl. Mm-hmm. And so I want to ask you, since you have more experience, you've been to other places, what survival tips, advice would you give to aspiring travelers or those like me that are
just wanting
sort of limited still in that area?
Yeah. Honestly, God, that's the thing with solo traveling, you're always going to be scared, right? Like, it doesn't matter how brave you are. Like, I consider myself a pretty courageous person for the most part.
Right. Same
but
here.
Yeah. But an hour before my flight, I was like, oh shit, am I really hopping on a plane to Guatemala and Cuba by myself? Like, who the fuck do I think I am? That was my thought process. But at the same time, I mean, my advice for people wanting to go out and do it. Just do it. Just do it. I know that's harder than easier than it sounds, right? Mm-hmm. But plan it out, right? Plan it out. Give yourself the time and space to go out and travel. But also too, don't think that traveling is super expensive either, because I think that's the reason why people don't travel sometimes, right? It's either one of two things. They are either fearful of it or
money.
They can't afford it. Right. You don't need to spend a lot of money to travel. You just don't. I mean, for me as a traveler, I stay in some, pretty dirty, shitty places. If that means that if I can save money there, save money here and all these other areas, if that means that I can go out and actually experience a new country and meet different people, it's worth it. And not everyone is, as minimal and is willing to go through that. But I'd say just consider it.
Exactly.
Don't allow the fear of going by yourself, the fear of being a woman, right? That's a very valid fear to have, right? To go out in the country by yourself. It's valid, but also don't let it hold you back. Women are smart. They're strong. Go out, be cautious, yes, but be hyper aware, but also open. I think it's a balancing act.
Exactly. And preach, because honestly, my experiences at hostels haven't been bad. Right. I've had pretty good experiences. I've only done it in the States. The experience was beautiful. Yeah. I met people who I still have on social media. It wasn't dirty at all. And then I went on to New York, but in New York, I was staying at an Airbnb. And I rang in the year with the ball drop. Oh, and, that's amazing. Dude, yeah, my experiences in hostels, even Airbnbs, haven't been bad. They've been great. As I mentioned before, you are currently a writer for the Las Vegas Review Journal, Off the Strip, and through your platform, Searching for Mya, you interviewed author of Fearless Giving, Taff Ashcraft, and Alyssa Yamamoto of brand Hip to Pico, right? Am I pronouncing it right?
Hip to Pico.
Hip to Pico.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And most recently, as we just touched on, you hosted Envision. So I have to ask, what's next for you?
So there's a lot going on. I'm really excited for the future, honestly. I'll be heading out of Vegas and taking my, passion and love for storytelling to Santa Rosa, California, which is, about an hour away from San Francisco, which is amazing. I will be writing for the Press Democrat, which is a newspaper out there, and continuing my freelance work on the side for Off the Strip. But there's also a project that I'm trying to move forward that's also in progress called the Deep Take Project.
Okay.
And it is a multimedia platform, right? And it's centered around conversations that heal. So I want to interview people who just have an amazing story to tell. I also want to bring on articles and stories as well onto the platform.
Right.
And there's also another part to the series as well, to the project.
Envision?
Not Envision. So there's a lot going on there. So my dream is to host interviews in my RV or my future RV. Yes.
That's cool. Actually, yeah. That's really nice. That sounds really neat.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of trying to find like a cheap RV right now that I can fix up. My hope is either I find it here in Las Vegas or out in Santa Rosa. And, I'm going to just start making baby steps towards that, because the ultimate dream is to host interviews and podcast episodes in the RV so I can travel around and talk to people from all over the world and have them sit in my RV and tell their story. Because I think that's really important. And that's what I'm working on.
and who would you like to bring on board to your RV? Just like anyone, or is there specific people you would like to target?
Well, what I'm all about is human stories, right? So I want to make sure that I'm talking to people from different communities who have an interesting story, who have struggled in life, who, can tell their story about triumph and tribulation, but also, finding peace within themselves. I also want to bring on family members. So maybe even like a son and a father, daughter, and mother, and kind of go through family history, family trauma, those sorts of things. So it's in the works. Obviously, there's a lot of, moving parts to it, but
exactly.
But, just like with your project, it's going to unfold as I just do stuff, as I create. It's not going to be perfect right away, but if I can make like small, easy steps, then it'll eventually become something. So right now, on my days off, I try to interview people for the Deep Take project. So I'm kind of just like collecting art and collecting all these different pieces for it. So that's what I've got going on. I'm excited for the future. It's exciting, but also scary. But, I'm just here trying to create my own lane.
That's what it's all about, girl. That is what it's all about. And yes. I'm happy to hear, girl, when you move out to California and we can safely hang out, hit me up.
I will. I'm excited. I'm going to come down to LA. We're going to go to a music show. We're going to do all the things.
And I'm going to go up to Santa Rosa. Has your family been supportive of you through your journey as a professional, as a freelancer, as a writer, even as a traveler? Have they been supportive of you? And if not, how have you dealt with it, and where are you now in your relationships with them?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's been hard, it's been a challenge, being a woman who is very unconventional, right? Who is wanting to create their own path, who is independent, but is also very passionate about their craft, like all of these things. Mm-hmm. It's been a challenge. I come from a Filipina American Catholic traditional background, right? My parents are in their 60s. They're traditional for the most part.
Right.
So it has been hard to create my own lane and feel good about it, right? Because it doesn't matter what anyone says, I'm going to still move forward and create my own lane, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to feel good. It's always going to feel uncomfortable when I go out and travel and wanting to tell these people's stories, and I tell my family about that. They don't understand all the time.
Right.
And I think for a while I tried my best to explain myself, and I really wanted them to understand every step of the way. But in the reality of it all, it's not going to happen, especially if you grew up with traditional, parents. I'd say that I have a pretty good mix of traditional and non, because my father, he is traditional, but he's also a musician.
I read that. I didn't know you were from Portland, Oregon. I didn't know.
Yes. So, so I have that traditional, but then I also have that flair too. Like my dad was a rebel. He left the Philippines at like 18 years old, came to the US wanting to like be this rock star. Met my mom along the way. She was a dancer. So honestly, at the root of who I am, like I'll always be unconventional, always be a rebel, because I kind of saw that in my dad,
Right.
My mom, on the other hand, she's more traditional. She's, Catholic traditional woman. She's a CNA. She's an assistant nurse. Right. So
my mom recently retired, but yes, on the same boat. She was a CNA. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's weird. Like I've got half and half, but I think I probably get the most conflict from my mom, right?
Right.
She doesn't quite understand the decisions that I make, or why I try to create things, or why I do the freelance work, or why I want to travel. She doesn't quite understand those things. But I think at this moment in time, at this phase of my life, I think she's starting to recognize and see me a bit more. And I think she understands that these things are really important to me. But not only that, but this is the only way that I know how to move, because any other way, it does not feel good to me, and it doesn't feel right. And it feels like a waste of
energy.
Yeah, exactly. So
Everything you just said aligns so much with what I've experienced along the way. They don't understand it. I mean, I come from a single parent household, so I only have my mom. And even though I know she's a little open about things, at the end of the day, in her core, she's still very traditional.
you kind of just have to accept that your parent, your family will not always understand, and we don't have to spend our entire lives like spelling it out for people. I think that eventually we'll just come to a place in ourselves to know that, like, we've got this.
We got this. We know at least we know where we're going, and we just need to continue following that path and hoping that everything turns out right, which it will.
Yes,
it will.
It will.
It will.
Eventually.
And to close it out, Mya, I want to ask you, what does success mean to you? What is it looking like for you at the moment? And what piece of advice would you offer aspiring storytellers, podcast hosts, or even journalists looking to create their own lanes?
Okay. So first part of the question, what does success mean to me, and what does that look like? So at this place in my life, what success looks like is just, it feels like freedom, right? So not financial freedom, although that stuff is important, right?
It is.
But just freedom within myself, like knowing that I can create and put whatever art or writing or story out there, and just know that because it's coming from me, that it is worthy, and just being okay with just expressing myself. That is success. But also success to me is being able to create just something really, really beautiful, really pivotal for people to to experience.
Right.
So in that case, right, I have this dream of creating my own independent travel journalism series, right, where I'm talking to different locals of different countries and sharing parts of their story with the world, because I really, truly believe that interviewing, storytelling, it is so incredibly healing. And I want to be able to like provide that and give that to the world, right? I think that's what it is. I think success is being able to give something really powerful and beautiful to people around you, and knowing that it is impacting them, healing them, sparking some new idea or dialogue within themselves.
Making some sort of change.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
And then the second part of the question, create and write and be a part of projects that matter to you.
Right.
Don't do it just because, you want the exposure or, all these things. I mean, that's important. That's great. But in the long run, just for sole purposes, do things that you are really passionate about. Do things that matter to you. And if it's something that you are not feeling, if it's something that doesn't resonate, say no. Say no. Like, say no to things that do not resonate, and say like a hell yes to things that do.
Right. Be brave enough to say your yeses and your nos, especially your nos.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that's also a good point too. Just be brave and be vulnerable. Be brave and be vulnerable. I think when you live by those things, I think it leads you to creating some really beautiful, impactful stories. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you so much. Beautifully put, right from the beginning of our interview to the closing. Thank you so much, Mya, for joining me. Thank you so much for accepting to be my guest in my own lane. And I really hope that everything that I asked and everything that you answered really resonates with anyone looking to be a podcast host, a journalist, or a storyteller. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal.